Now that we've got everything looking exactly how we want it, we're going to build the upload.php file to actually deal with file uploads. So we're going to be choosing some files. In this case, we'll choose a few of these files, and we'll go ahead and actually check in upload.php that these have been uploaded. We're not going to touch upload.js for now. We'll be looking at that in the next part. What we're going to be doing though is making sure that the files actually upload first of all. Now files will be uploaded to this uploads folder in my root directory of where I'm building everything. So remember, I've got my CSS folder, JS folder, and I've got my uploads folder, which is currently empty. So all files will be stored here. Let's make a start on upload.php then. We're going to use the header function to give a different content type to this output. The reason we're doing this is because with the upload.js file, we're going to be outputting or reading in rather JSON, a JSON string. So we're going to be outputting JSON in here with our succeeded and failed error messages. And don't worry if you're unfamiliar with this, we'll look at this later in detail. So I'm going to say content type application /JSON and just capitalize that T there. So now that we've done that, we can go ahead and start to build the rest of the page. So I'm going to create a variable called uploaded and just assign that a empty array. And I'm also going to create an allowed array, and this is going to hold which file types are allowed. In my case, I'm going to allow MP4 and nothing else, although we could go ahead and allow something like MP4 and JPEG or MP4 and PNG if we wanted to. So now I'm going to create a succeeded array, and I'm also going to create a failed array. So we're going to be storing the succeeded files in here and the failed files in here. So let's go ahead and create a quick if statement to check if the files array passed through to this is empty or not. If it's not, we'll say OK. So we can actually go and test this out, because remember, inside of here we've got the action to upload.php, we've also got the method set to post, and we've got the ability to upload files. So let's take a look at how this works. I'm going to choose a file, I'm going to click upload, and it says OK here. Now notice if we inspect here, we can go ahead and check the network tab, refresh, continue, and you can see that if we scroll down, this has a content type of application JSON. So we're going to be reading in with this via an AJAX request later on, but we want to go ahead and nail the actual PHP functionality of this beforehand. So let's now actually build some useful functionality in here. I'm going to go ahead and loop through each of the files that we've chosen. Remember, we have multiple files here, so we need to do something for each of the files that we've chosen. So I'm going to access the files array, and I'm going to access file. Remember, that's the name of the file that we called. So if you go ahead and name this something different, this will be different too. So I'm going to loop through name, and I'm going to say as key name. So we'll go ahead and output these. So I'm going to echo key, and then I'm going to concatenate on name. Let's see what this looks like now. So let's choose two files and upload. So we've got 0, which is the key. This is the position in the array that this file is at. We'll be using that later on. And then we've got the name of the actual file. Then we've got the key 1, which is the second file, and then the name of the second file. So we now know that we can access this data. What we need to check though is whether there was any error here. So I'm not going to be allowing, or I'm not going to be logging error handling here, but you can go ahead and choose what you want to do here. So we're going to say if the error at this specific key is 0, that means that everything's okay. So in this case, we'll go ahead and say temp, and we need to access the temporary location of this file, and that allows us to actually upload the file, because when you choose a file in your browser, this will be stored in a temporary location before you go ahead and issue the move uploaded files function and actually move this. So remember, it's file, and in here it's tmp name, and that's at the position of the key. So we can echo temp to see what this looks like. Let's go ahead and refresh, choose these two files, hit upload. So we've now got the location of these uploaded files, these temporary files, so we can move this later on. Now I'm going to enforce a little bit of security here in terms of the allowed extensions. There are lots of different ways you can do this, and this isn't a foolproof solution, so you may want to go ahead and actually implement your own way of uploading files. This could be using a framework or something that's had a long-standing code base and the code's hardened for how the security is checked on these files. But what I'm going to do for now is grab the extension. So I'm going to use the explode function, and I'm going to explode on a dot. And by passing a name here, that will give me an array of hopefully 2 elements. So if we just check this out, in fact I can just refresh here. There we go. So we've got an array here. So the last key is basically what's been separated by a dot. So in this case it's MP4. And what we can actually do is go ahead and now assign extension the value of string to lower, because remember we're checking, or we're only providing lowercase values here. And we can go ahead and use the end function, which will grab the end element of the array. In this case it will be MP4. So when I go ahead and echo out extension, this is now a string rather than an array, so we don't need to use print R on it. You can see that we get MP4 for both of them. So with the extension stored, we can actually check if this is allowed based on that extension. But first of all, I'm going to generate a random file name. Well, not random, we're going to use the MD5 file function on the temporary file to generate an MD5 hash of the file. We're then going to append a timestamp onto it and then append the extension on. And this allows us to upload the file but give it a unique name so we don't accidentally overwrite existing files. And we don't want to store files with the same file name. We want to give them a random name. And this ensures that they're just, well, not unguessable, but as unguessable as possible for this example. So we'll use the MD5 file function on our temporary file, which we stored up here, remember. And we can then append on the timestamp. And then what we want to do is append on the extension. So if we echo this, we can see that for each file we've got this, so this MD5 hash of the file with the timestamp here appended on the end, and then the same with this file as well. So we've got 2 files at the moment. Now that we've stored that file, we can actually store this in the uploaded or uploads folder that we created here. So we create a if statement and we say in array. This checks if something is in an array. In this case, we're going to check if this extension is in this array. If it is, we can assume that it is a allowed file. So we say ext in allowed. So if that's true, we can then go ahead and nest another if statement and say move uploaded file, choosing a file name and a destination. Now, move uploaded file will actually move this uploaded file to the destination for you, but at the same time we're checking if that's true, so if that's actually worked or not. So where does the file name come from? In this case it's the temp, so that's the stored in our temporary directory, and we know the destination. We just do this in double quotes. This is uploads slash and then the name of the file, that variable that we created here, and that's it. So if that's worked, then we've succeeded. So we can go ahead and append on the name of the file and the file itself, so we can link to it with in our succeeded array. So let's do that now. So succeeded equals, this means we're appending an element onto an array. We want to add an array into an array, and within here we want to have a name. That's going to be the name of the file, and the file, which is going to be the actual file name, in this case file. So we're storing name in here and we're storing the file in here. We'll output these in a minute just to see what they look like. So otherwise, if this doesn't work, something's gone wrong. So basically this is only if, in fact, we could probably combine these if statements. So let's go ahead and combine these just to make sure that this is foolproof. Let's go ahead and get rid of this if statement here. So now what we're saying is, if it's allowed and it's been uploaded successfully, then append to the succeeded array. Otherwise, we've got an error either due to this or due to this. So we can go ahead and say failed equals array. So this is appending an array on for each of the files, remember, and all we need this time is the name. So we just add the name there. So this will actually work and go ahead and upload our files. Let's just go ahead though and down here do a check. So the check is going to be if not empty post AJAX, and we'll look at that later. This is something that we're going to add on in our JavaScript call. But for now, let's go ahead and just echo JSON encode array. So JSON encode is going to take an array, in this case it's this array here, which we're going to add values to in a minute, and it's going to encode it to a JSON string. Now with that JSON string, we're going to be using this in the AJAX part of things to actually upload the file. So I'm going to output succeeded as succeeded and failed rather as failed. So we're going to place this in a moment inside of here, and the reason that we're doing this is because we're checking whether it's an AJAX request. If it's not an AJAX request, we don't need to output this. We could do something else. We could direct the user off somewhere, and this is basically what we were talking about earlier, when if JavaScript isn't available, this form will be traditionally submitted as we've been looking at in the example here. In this case, if AJAX isn't within this request, which we'll be adding with upload.js, then we can cart the user off to somewhere else and say your files have been uploaded. So let's take a look at what this actually looks like first of all though. We'll start the process again, so we'll choose a couple of files and hit upload. Okay, so succeeded. We've got an, let's just take a look. Succeeded. Okay, so when we go ahead and refresh this time, there we go. So we've got a succeeded array and a failed array. So we've got failed as meta.txt, but we're obviously not seeing anything in our succeeded because I've gone ahead and spelt it wrong. Let's go ahead and amend that, refresh, continue, and there we go. So we've got a succeeded array with a name and a file that's successfully been uploaded, and a failed array with the name of the file that hasn't been uploaded. What we can now do though is check in our uploads directory and see that them files do actually exist. We refreshed a few times, so we've had these uploaded a few times. I'm going to go ahead and delete them though. So now that we've done that, we've successfully completed the upload process, so we can actually upload files now. But what's missing is the intermediary to allow us to do this via AJAX and actually then allow our progress bar to determine the progress of the file upload. So it works in terms of the back end, but in the next video, we're going to look at doing this with JavaScript to allow AJAX or an AJAX request to submit this data to our PHP file. Go ahead and upload these files.